Moin moin, ladies and gentlemen, Dawn Spector here. Today, finally, with my review for the ever so hyped Moondrop Aria 2021. And yes, I kind of already not hinted, but actually explicitly said, this IEM got quite a bit of hype and praise. And yeah, I ordered it somewhere, I think like November or so last year, and have been using it since then. And yeah, today I will be discussing if this IEM actually is worth the hype or not. And yeah, as usual, I'll be starting off with packaging and accessories. And yeah, this is the packaging. It's like matte black, comes with, again, another Moondrop anime girl, whatever. So let's quickly skip that, because we only care about audio. Here you even get a neat frequency graph that actually is close to what I measured, but we talk about that later on. And yeah, I'm gonna move that out of the picture. The internal box comes with like, this is like gold, I don't know, like copper gold accents, and does look definitively pretty nice. In there, we keep the scheme. This one can just be flopped over. You get your QC pass card, the carrying case, the IEM would be in here. And if I manage to remove the IEM, so beneath here would be a pair of, what's it on the pliers, tongues. So to actually mount filters, because you get replacement filters, but this is really difficult to remove. So you can already see I almost ripped it apart trying to remove it, because you need to be like really thorough with like force to actually remove that in order to remove the the filters here. But a good thing you get filters, because everything else is a bit Spartan, like it's a bit minimalistic what you get. So carrying case itself is, you can see here, not mega sturdy. I've seen better for cheaper, but the zipper is pretty smooth and they keep their theme here pretty nicely going. Opening it reveals the tips we get. And that's unfortunately just random as tips. It's like you get 3 different sizes, S, M, and L, but they are all the same. Yeah, like I don't know. I would have liked to see at least an other variation of tips, like maybe with a wider nozzle or foam or both. But this at this price point, I think, is a bit too little. Would have liked to see more. Yeah, and then of course for the sake of environment, this could have been reduced to just, be better for our planet. But, okay, I mean, at this price point, if you like a nice unpackaging, you will get it here. That's definitely nice presentation. And that already brings me to the IEM build. Whoop. So let's get our Aria here in the picture and uncable it. Whoop. So yes, this is the Moondrop Aria. It's made out of metal. I'm not sure if iron or steel or aluminium. It feels pretty weighty in the hand. Definitively more massive than, for instance, the PMV PP here, which is made from aluminium. This one is lighter than this one. So I suppose they use steel or very thick aluminium. I'm not sure. So that's already, pretty nice when you have something weighty in your hand. And then you see the, black coloring or coating here, definitely looking nice and also seems to be executed well. But from what I read with at least the Starfield, people complained the paint chipping off, and with everything painted, not anodized, can definitively happen. So I'm not sure if this is the case here. I'm just saying it could happen, right? And if we come from the paint to the actual gap in between here, this is okay for the price point. I've seen a nicer consistency around IEMs with a smaller gap at a littler or less of a price point, but this is not a deal breaker. Like, it does still feel smooth. You do notice there's a gap and it's like unevenly distributed around the IEM, but really at this price point, it's okay, like not much to complain here. Then going to the connector, you get a recessed 2-pin, as you can hopefully see here in the video. That's definitely like recessed by 1 millimeter or so. So that means, let me just grab the cable. You do need a 2-pin connector for recessed cables. This one, let me just plug it in so you can see it again. as you can see, it's just recessed by, yeah, like millimeter maybe. But still, because it is so, yeah, a bit recessed, you still need the whole cable for recessed pins. And generally, I think this is integrated well. I don't have any complaints with the integration of the 2-pin connector here. Doesn't feel like it will, yeah, fall out in any reasonable time. Yeah, and then we come to the front of the IEM, which of course is the nozzle. And yeah, here you can see on the nozzle is, yeah, I want to say like metal mesh. The holes actually are a bit bigger than I'm used to with other IEMs. So be careful if you have like dust around, that will definitely get in here. But so far it did a reasonable job of keeping ear gunk and whatever out. Another thing to mention here, you have a pressure hole here and here. And those are also on the, I want to say like biggerish side of pressure holes. But I so far haven't had the problem of it actually collecting dirt or anything. So yeah, replacement grids, as I said, included in the packaging, so you could change them if you wanted. So I don't have any complaints with the build quality here. It's okay. It's like, it's not great at this price point, but really, really there's nothing to complain at like below 100. Okay, then I would say let's go to the cable. So let me unplug the other IEM. And I start bottom up. So first at the bottom you do get this 3.5mm plug. Definitely on the sleek or thin side. And as you can see, it's 90-degree angled. However, I think this is plastic. Like, I have seen better cables again for fewer money here. And after that we get a strain release switch. Let me just strain it. Wow, people, it's working. It's a working strain release. Unbelievable. I can't believe it. Wow, companies actually care about something doing what it's supposed to do. Great. Yeah, so a bit of ironic, sorry, but yeah. This is a working strain release, which I do like. And that brings me to the main cable, which is like a 2-core braided cable. And I got to be honest, while this is not bad, it still is a bit janky. Like, I try to straighten it as much as possible, and now it's okay, but it still feels a bit on the janky side. It's not bad. I definitely have worse cables at this price point, but it does feel a bit cheap and janky. Like, it's, again, not bad, but I don't like it. It really, like, it will probably stay alive or, like, last for a reasonable time. But, yeah, these 2 cores here and with the bit of jankiness, it is light and it doesn't feel quality. And that brings us to the splitter. There's another strain release at the bottom here, which is a bit too thin and too small in my opinion, but at least you can see it's flexible enough here, right? It does bend and move a bit. And when you come to the splitter itself, that is, at least from my feeling, is done from aluminium, I think. So unlike the plug itself, that was plastic. And yeah, going up you get 2 thinner cables. Let me just get them side by side so you can see that. So yep, top cables definitively thinner than bottom cables. Would have liked to see cable in the same thickness because this is, it's really light, right? This is a really light cable. You can just use the thicker one at the top as well. Won't be too much of a difference anyway, just making you feel a bit more consistent overall. The chin slider itself, as you can see, it just slides up and down, up and down. Really, this is not staying in place at all. It didn't do anything for me. As soon as I pull it up, it instantly slides down. So unfortunately not functional for me, or at least at my unit here. Then further up we come to the ear hooks, and compared to the relatively, I want to say, yeah, already not expensive feeding cable, yeah, the ear hooks don't do the job either. This is generally looking a bit cheap. It does feel pretty solid rubberized. I would have liked to see at least a bit less. I mean, they did at least choose the angle around here not too small, so you will probably not have a pressure spot on your ear. But for people who have like small ears, this is just would be a bit too big, and yeah, it just doesn't feel quality. Even the connector here, it's not metal, it's just cheap plastic. Like, this is, it's fine, but honestly, at this price point, I do expect a bit more for the cable. And that also is the L&R markings here. It's just, as you can see, black on black. And only because this one has actually lighting, you can see that there's an L here. In real life, it's really difficult to see which side of the cable you're actually having, which gets even worse because this one does not have L and R markings either. So you do have to search for this L and R, and yeah, ain't great though, ain't great. Okay, and then we come to comfort. And yeah, as I said in my previous review, I will throw on measurements of the actual IEM. So, I mean, measurements in terms of dimensions, so like length, width, and depth, and also nozzle diameter and length, so you can better judge if it will work for you. Because comfort is pretty, I want to say, unique to everyone, and for me, this one is medium comfortable. Like, it can be pretty comfortable, but with this long kind of nozzle here, combined with the overall shell shape, I had a bit of a problem finding the right tip for me. Because the tip that actually would give me the best fit would be the spin fits here, but as you can see, there's a missing nozzle. And with the pair of spin fits I have, they stay on, but not really tight. And that is in theme with other tips that I usually use. For example, the XLR tags, they just don't fit on at all. Like the missing nozzle here could be a deal breaker potentially for you. If you have favorite tips but just need a fun thicker nozzle or a lip to stay on, it's just missing here. And that's also my problem with it. Because other tips like the Final Type E, they do stay on and they are pretty comfy, but they are too long. They just reach too far in my ear canal, like still 2 mm more here. And that with the nozzle length and the general shape is just too much. It's going to hurt my inner ear after like half an hour or so. So that is generally why I could not get I want to say multi-hour comfortable fit with these. I think you can, absolutely, because here pressure holds doing a good job and we are preventing driver flags. But from my experience, this is not a mega comfortable IEM. Maybe if your ear canal is like more straight and longer, it could work for you, but for me it just didn't. And yeah, that brings me to isolation. And yeah, I can make it pretty short. It's pretty damn average. It's a thick metal IEM, but because of the big pressure holes and the general shape, which is like not exactly semi-custom, I cannot get it to isolate really well or like above average. So, concluding, it is okay for the office, for at home, and other more quiet occasions. But if you go through louder public transport, for example trams, or if you're just walking in the city center or along a noisy road, it's not going to cut it. It's okay if you turn up a volume like quite a bit, but if you want to listen at like reasonable volume, it's not going to cut it in terms of isolation. So that brings me to drivability. According to spec, 32 ohms at 122 decibels, this does look pretty efficient for an 1DD on paper. And in reality, it also is. You do get a pretty nice stage and most of the details the area is able to like achieve for you on your random as smartphone or random as USB-C dongle. So for me, this would be an S9 Plus. And when I change to the BTR5, which has more power and is actually cleaner, I do have the feeling I do get a bit more details and a bit more clarity, but really there wasn't much of an improvement here. When going to the SP200, just didn't make things better for me at least. Maybe some would probably argue it could be a bit better imaging or staging. I didn't have the feeling it got improvement at all. In terms of numbers, I would say you do get like 85–90% of multi-areas capable on a random USB-C dongle on your smartphone. But as a quick side note I have to give you here, with this kind of tuning and presentation, I actually did prefer the softer playback or the softer presentation of my S9 Plus over the slightly bright shifted BTR5. SP200 with its very analytical and very flat sound actually was okay, but I still preferred the more, I want to say, smoothed or a bit, I think, bass boosted presentation of my S9 Plus. And I'm not even a bass fan, right? But I just want to say it got a bit too intense with the BTR5 for me, and I would have to EQ treble down to make it more listenable. And that brings me already to the sound signature. Of course, start with the general one. And yeah, the Moondrop Aria 2021 is utilizing, I want to say, like a tasteful V-shape. So that means it boosts bass and it boosts treble, and bass is boosted all the way to mid bass, not just sub bass. You do get a proper Pina gain, so you don't have to worry about that. And generally, it is pretty well tuned. And that already brings me to treble. And yeah, if I talk about treble here, I got to be honest, even for the graph does not indicate it, I found treble here a bit too hot, especially on the BTR5. Yeah, according to graph, there's a peak around like 8.5, 9K, but in reality, this can also like reach like to like 10K-ish, depending on what tip you use. And I got to say, that didn't really matter which tip I threw on. I always had the feeling that like upper to mid treble was a bit too hard for me. Like, it is not a bad 8K peak like Bayer, right? So you don't have to worry about that. But I still found it a bit too much. And yeah, also the air after that, the graph does show there's a bigger spike, but I didn't have the feeling it was that pronounced. I more had the feeling that, yeah, the actual peak at like 8.5 to 9.5K, something like that, just is a bit too much for my personal taste. And yeah, and fun story though, the Moondrop Variations, which comes in at a pretty similar tuning, at least in the treble, I did not have the feeling it was too hot in the treble region. I have no clue if it actually has to do something with the balancing before that, or that the spike after that maybe is in a region that makes it more unpleasant to my ear with the 8.5 to 9.5K peak. But really, Variations totally fine, while this one I just found too hot on the BTR5. That brings me to mid treble, and I gotta say, it's pretty good there. You do have a slight dip between like 4 and 7K-ish according to graph, but I didn't mind that at all. So that means for my library and to my taste, I think you do get a proper amount of energy for, yeah, splash and sizzle, and also E-guitars came off as pretty nice. So again, I found it sometimes a bit too hard. Again, in this region here as well, even for the graph might not look like that. But if you're listening to more jazzy tracks, it's not too noticeable. It can be noticeable, so I did notice a few songs here from the Black Sad soundtrack. The song Private Eye, Written Fate, as well as the main theme just came off as too much in this region. Not by a lot, but just a bit too intense, especially in the BTR5. Yeah, also in this region, I got to be honest, I think this IEM comes off as a bit of grainy. Here I noticed, yeah, more like synth songs like Werewolf Angels from Atlanta, or Medusa feat. Gloom Influx, as well as New York black metal apocalypse from Venator. They had this like grainy quality to them. It's not bad, like not overly grainy, like some cheap, like really treble boosted IEMs, but I still noticed it came off as grainy compared to other, I want to say, more bright offerings I have listened to, even at lower prices. And that brings me to lower treble and upper mids, because I want to summon those up. And I think I can just say these are really, really good. I did not have any problems with them. I had a really good clarity, or like I had a really good time with the clarity this IEM could provide. And I want to say the tonality for me was slightly off, just not exactly natural, but it was still absolutely fine. And yeah, female vocals in my library worked great with this one. So Weight of the World was pretty forward in the female vocal department, but still very enjoyable without ever having the need that I felt like I need to balance it by EQing or going to something else. Never Fade Away from the Cyberpunk 2077 soundtrack, similar story, because that has vocals that are a bit on the recessed side of things, I want to say, and this one just brought them out really nicely. And that brings me to the mids, or like mids generally. And yeah, as the graph is showing you, well, this is a V-shaped IEM. It adds a bit of additional warmth to the mids, and yeah, it does not cut through the mix as well as I would like. Yeah, granted, I'm not such a mega fan of V-shaped IEMs, at least if the staging is not really good, so vocals are in the center of your head, everything else around it, and that's also why I'm not such a great fan of these. Yeah, they are not horribly pushed back, so combining that with the bigger stage size, I would take this at every day of the week over the Tin T4 because that just, it had like a not in great staging and the vocals were just cut back too much, just didn't like it. And with this one, it's still fine. So you can still enjoy most vocals, I want to say, with this one, but really it can just be overplayed by treble and bass. So I did note here, yeah, vocals do have enough energy and presence, just a bit cut back in the mix. Brave New World from Iron Maiden, exactly that. A bit lost in the mix, but overall still fine in balancing, so you don't have to worry that you won't get any vocals. And that, yeah, I would say coming to lower mids and upper bass, and yeah, you can see it at the graph, you do get additional warmth here, and if you're not a fan of that, I think this is not an IEM for you. I did not mind it because that gave bass guitars, for example in After We Rain from the Bird's Eye View, a nice energy. So yeah, same is true again for lower mids and upper bass region. And as I said, I think some might not like that, but for me this was tuning I can live with. And yeah, bass guitars had a good tonality to them, and it was not exactly mega natural, but still better than other IEMs I've heard at this price point, or other V-shaped IEMs, for example. Then I think I can already come to mid bass, and I'm not a mid bass fan, people. I'm not like allergic to mid bass, right? I do like a good energy there, but this one just, I like the mid bass presentation here very, very much. Like this is, I think, one like at the sub 100 price point, I want to say, really good mid bass, because you do get a nice punch, you do get a good speed, and you also get texture at this price point is definitively something I haven't heard too often. And yeah, again, you have to like yourself a good mid bass for this to work, but sometimes I do. So yeah, one of my guilty pleasures here from the Space Jam soundtrack, All of My Days, that has an, yeah, I want to say like a kind of decent bass line, and sometimes it has this occasional two bass notes in just directly in succession. For example, directly at the beginning of the song, just worked nicely here. I had the feeling this was nicely satisfying punch. And yeah, same story continues for, again, Venator, New York black metal apocalypse, or the other side from Venator as well. Great punch, great slam, tonality also very nice. And same goes for more like other synthy stuff like Dance with the Dead. It doesn't really matter, like they are here, I did notice, as example, worked great. I had a really nice fun with the area in terms of mid-bass. And I'm not a mid-bass fan. And that brings me to sub-bass, and I want to say the trend is kind of continuing here. You do get a decent sub-bass presentation with texture, it just is not great. So that means in Interstellar's Mountains, you do get a bass note, like a sub-bass note, until like 2 minutes 14.5, and then you do get still a bit of presence, and like 2 minutes 15, after that it's gone, so it's not the best. But at this price point, I don't have much to complain in terms of sub-bass, and yeah, this with the great mid-bass presentation and great mid-bass fun, honestly, this is a great bassy IEM. And that brings me to soundstage layering and imaging. And yep, this IEM is also not bad there. Starting with soundstage, it does have a pretty nice, I want to say like big feeling soundstage. It's not huge by any means, but compared to other IEMs I've heard, for instance the Tin T4, which also goes for like a V-ish tuning, this one just has a better soundstage. And this, yeah, leads to an, I want to say like a better feeling for more atmospheric tracks, because you do have the feeling it's a bit wider than usual. The main problem of this one is you don't get a good imaging. This means while you can absolutely game with these, I would not recommend it. I did try Hunt Showdown, Insurgency, Sandstorm with these, and while it was okay, and I would say you can definitely get used to the way these image, I don't think they are great for that. So I did notice that it is pretty difficult to decipher if it's like right top or right front or right bottom. Like you just can say it's somewhere rightish, but imaging just wasn't that good. So if you want to use these for gaming, I think you could have a hard time. Probably possible if you get used to it, right? But just isn't that great. And that I think can bring me to layering, because layering is also okay. You do get the free blobs. Sometimes you do get an outside layer, but yeah, it's like, it is normal, I want to say. So yeah, you do get, however, a movement between like left, mid, and right that has a more natural, I want to say, presentation to it. But I can't tell you these are different layers. Like, it's difficult to distinguish them. So layering also not great. And that brings me to, separation, dynamics, and coherence. And I start off with coherence because it's in 1D DIM. Coherence is pretty good. And yes, again, I'm not sure if I put coherence in the graininess, if this is part of coherence, but as I said, I had the feeling that treble usually comes off as a bit grainy. And it's not bad at anything. I've heard other stuff that feels much more grainy than this one, but it's just, I still have to mention it. And yeah, separation at this price point, absolutely no problem. Like, it's totally fine. Like, I can't tell you this is bad or good. Like, it's just okay. Dynamics are, again, they are good. They are not great, but I do have a good feeling that they have macro and micro dynamics at most of these iterations. And I really don't have any problems with the dynamics here. It's good, all right? No problems, but also nothing that I would call out as, oh, this is great. Yeah, I did notice here in the dynamic department, the Blade Runner soundtrack or Nier Automata worked pretty well in the dynamic department, but I didn't notice them as overly well dynamic. And it brings me to the verdict. And I gotta be honest here, people, I don't exactly know how I feel about the ARIA. Because on the one hand, everything the ARIA does, it does competent. It does not lack at any department so bad that I would not be able to recommend it. Even if you do need an IEM that images reasonably well, it's still not bad. It's okay. And this combined with the nice, really fun bass, and this combined with the really fun bass and the not too much recessed mids, I think the ARIA 2021 can be recommended. But I don't want to recommend it because it's, again, just in V-shaped IEM. It boosts the lower mids, it boosts the upper bass region a bit too much for some people. And while I personally don't mind it, I mind that the vocals are not great. I mind that the treble is a bit too grainy. So I'm not entirely sure if I should recommend it or not. Because from what most people say, they really like this IEM. They have no problems with it. But I just see that it's pretty competent at everything it's doing, but it just doesn't blow me away. It's not like the last IEM, which was the Hard Mirror, which I did listen to, and even after like 1 or 2 hours, I could already tell I want to recommend this. This isn't, like, it's unique at this price point. It does something I haven't heard at this price point, and this one it's V-shaped. It's well-tuned V-shaped, but we have IEMs like the Mini at a bit less. Of course, Mini technicality definitely worse than this one, so don't have to talk about it. But then we get the T3 Plus and we get the Dunu Titan. So we have more competitors that go for something like it, but with a bit more, I want to say, like fine-tuning. Because if you look at the graph, T3 Plus definitely looks better tuned than this one. Titan looks a bit more bright shifted, and that would be more for my flavor. So I just cannot recommend you this one without saying there might be better recommendations at this price point. And again, if you like yourself the tuning this one goes for with more warmth in the lower mids and upper bass, this is totally fine. Like it doesn't have any like big point of critique. But I just want to say, look at the market, because this is so competitive at the moment, you might be able to find better IEMs. And with this, I want to say, hope you enjoyed it. If you have questions, if you have critique, if you have any other feedback, please leave a comment. And with this, Don Spector out.